Hello, this is the Reverend Carol Flett. I'm the Associate Rector at St. Albans Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., where I have my regular parish ministry responsibilities, but I also have incorporated into that a number of interfaith relations opportunities for the parish and for local religious leaders and lay people in the D.C. area. One of my favorite interfaith programs, which I would like to share with you today, is a model for interfaith dialogue that is being duplicated around the country. It's called the Daughters of Abraham. It began in 2001 in Boston, Massachusetts, where I worked prior to coming to Washington, D.C., by Muslim, Christian, and Jewish women getting together and saying, what can we do to learn about each other's faith traditions? And they began saying, well, we do book groups, and women often are part of book groups. So Daughters of Abraham was born in late 2001. I was a part of one of those groups in Boston, and when I moved to Washington, D.C., I brought that model with me to Washington, where there are now two Daughters of Abraham groups here in D.C. Involving over 50 women. They're wonderful programs, and I'd like to tell you how you might develop a similar program in your community. First of all, it's important to develop a relationship with the leadership in surrounding religious communities of your community. So I reached out to imams and rabbis and Roman Catholic priests and clergy, asking them if they would make it known in their community that I was organizing a women's interfaith book group. And I had an open house in September of 2007. And over 50 women came, and I realized, oh my goodness, this is really going to be something very wonderful. So we determined that too many for one group. So we developed two groups. And we've been meeting monthly ever since that open house in the fall of 2007. We began by determining what books we'd like to read together. And we rotate each month from reading a book about Islam, a book written about Judaism, or a book written about Christianity, which could include a novel, a text, or some other book that would help us to talk about our faith traditions. The goal of the group is not to become a program or a course, however. It is really the goal is to develop a cooperative, meaningful interfaith community. And we meet together, and through these book discussions, we learn about each other's lives, our families, our jobs, and other things that we're involved in. One of the things I've discovered about interfaith dialogue groups, regardless of whether it's a book group or a social action group or a film dialogue, is that the people who participate in these dialogues are some of the most interesting people I've ever met. They have interesting professions, they've traveled in interesting places, and so they share more than just their thoughts or ideas about a book that we're reading, but they share their life experiences and other ways that they have interacted with people around the world or in other faith traditions. So the groups have a lot. We bring a lot to it. Some of the books we've read that I would suggest that people begin with, there's a requirement we have, if you could call it a requirement, an encouragement, is that everyone would have read Houston Smith's World Religions as a basic text before they begin to get into an interfaith dialogue. Because there are some things about all of our traditions that can be found in simple resources such as this book, which is now in paperback. So that when we meet in dialogue, we're not asking questions that are things we can find out more simply in other places, but we can go a little bit deeper in our discussions about our traditions. And so people come into the groups already having some working vocabulary about each of our traditions. The other thing that we do together is that we invite each other to our own religious festivals or feasts or observances. So we often, during Ramadan, I could go to an iftar almost every day, frequently attending iftars during Ramadan, during the high holidays in the Jewish community, being a part of some of their observances, interfaith seders, and then we invite, as Christians, we invite them to our various services that we have. And so we get to experience not only our lives, but how we worship and how we practice our community's religious practices and observances. So it's been a a meaningful and wonderful experience. If you'd like more information about the Daughters of Abraham, we have a website. It's www.daughtersofAbraham.com. There are now 13 Daughters of Abraham groups in the Massachusetts area. There are 2 in Washington, D.C., but there are about 10 or 15 other groups around the country who have all discovered this model of interreligious dialogue and have gone to the website and found ways that they can duplicate this model and be a part of this larger network, so that we do communicate with other interfaith book groups in other parts of the country. And if you Google, you'll find the daughtersofAbraham.com and other ways and places that the groups meet. So I encourage talking to those of you who might be wanting to learn more about interfaith book groups and other models of interfaith dialogue. Thank you.
Reverend Flood, I just have a quick question after listening
Yes.
to your little talk. Can you share maybe a little anecdote? You talk about sharing stories a lot, but an anecdote, someone you've met in this group and connected with that really made an impression on you that maybe wouldn't have met otherwise.
Probably women who are from other countries that I might not have had the opportunity to meet. There are particularly Muslim women who are from Kashmir, Turkey, and Iran, that I don't know that I would have had an opportunity to meet women from these other countries before. But when we come together, we learn about each other's countries and cultures as well. And we've had very meaningful and long relationships now. And so I will go to their mosques to be a part of some of their iftars during Ramadan. And I value their friendships.